This is the first Matt Slick debate I've seen in which he didn't look like he just got out of bed.
We only have two options that can have explanatory power. For example, we can say that God created the universe or God did not create the universe. Both cannot be true, but at least one of them must be.
Well, no, not really. In order for a statement to have a truth value, it has to have a meaning. Meaningless statements are neither true nor false. As far as I can tell, neither the assertion, "a God created the universe," nor "a God did not create the universe," have any discernible meaning.
Well, I agree that logic is a function of the brain, but not just the brain. We both know that people can reason correctly. But how would you recognize correct reasoning if not by appealing to something outside the brain, such as the laws of logic, which guide proper reasoning? But these laws cannot be the product of the human brain. Otherwise, there is no way to determine if a person's reasoning is right or wrong.
Not true. Logic may simply be a useful fiction. Within the framework of that fiction, things can be right or wrong without necessitating that the framework has any basis outside of the brain. The rules of baseball are entirely a human invention. They do not exist outside of human brains. Does that mean there's no basis by which we can say someone is playing baseball wrongly?
When the brain functions logically, it must be in harmony with the laws of logic. When the brain functions illogically, then it is not in harmony with those laws. But those laws are external to and independent of the brain, since they govern it in regard to proper reasoning.
People widely agree on the laws of logic because although it is possible to reason fallaciously, when we carefully examine our thoughts and inferences, it seems very consistently the case that the line between what makes sense to us and what does not make sense to us is accurately described by the laws of logic. The fact that we can occasionally think fallaciously does not prove that the laws of logic are more than descriptions of some aspect of how our brains function.
If the laws of logic are just functions of the human brain, as Mr. Barker has stated, then that explanation cannot work because brains are different and people contradict each other.
Yeah, brains are different, but the brains of people who can reason have some fundamental capabilities universally in common. The fact that these capabilities are not always applied doesn't mean that they don't exist or that they exist outside of the brain.
Furthermore, if someone's physical brain causes him to deny the law of non-contradiction, that law is not invalidated. It's still true. Therefore, this proves that the logical thinking occurs in the brain and that laws of logic do not depend upon human brains for their validity.
Not true. Even when we say that someone is thinking illogically, we are using our brains to make that judgment. As far as we know, no judgment about the validity of an argument has ever been made without a brain of some kind.
If these logical laws are agreed upon principles that people recognize as true, then they are recognizing principles that already exist.
They're recognizing the fact that they accurately describe the regularities of our experience. That's not the same as saying these principles exist in any metaphysical Platonic sense.
But how is it possible to have pre-existent logical propositions in an atheistic worldview? And if it is people who declare these axioms to be true, then do the logical propositions become untrue when people decide they don't serve their subjective wants anymore?
These laws have nothing to do with subjective wants. They have to do with mental experience. If I woke up tomorrow and realized that there is a way for the law of non-contradiction to be violated, I would cease believing in it, at least until I could be shown how I am mistaken.
If these laws of logic are descriptions of natural phenomena, then how do you, for example, observe the law of proper inference in nature, which says if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, without first presupposing the validity of the laws of logic which you use to deduce its truth?
I don't deduce its truth. I believe it because I don't understand what it would mean for it to be false. I believe it because I don't know how to not believe it. Just as the laws of physics are derived from empirical observation, the laws of logic are derived from mental experience. They are descriptions of what we see as making sense and what we see as not making sense. I don't believe the law of non-contradiction is true because I have deduced it to be true. I believe it because it is consistent with my experience that when I try to make sense of something both existing and not existing in the same way and at the same time, I find that I can't.